Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 Midnight News Edition coming to you live from the capital Algiers. And to the headlines. The Military Council in Niamey summoned Niger's ambassador to Côte d'Ivoire, and Russia and USA emphasized on the importance of peaceful and diplomatic solution to the crisis. After a day, his detention triggered the worst violence Tripoli has seen this year. The military commander at the center of clashes between the rival militias in Libya has been freed, and the UN envoy confirms that developments remind him of the need to go to elections. In a joint statement, the United Nations humanitarian organization called for an end to the tragedy in Sudan and affirmed that the situation is out of control after 4 months of war. In the developments of the war in Ukraine, Putin stresses that the security challenges facing the world are the result of reckless actions of the West, and Shoigu confirms that the Ukrainian military resources are almost exhausted. Hello again and welcome. First, the Chief of Staff of People's National Army, General Saeed Chengriha, participated on Tuesday via video conference in the 11th Summit on International Security in Moscow, at the invitation of the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. In his speech, the Army General indicated that Algeria is convinced that respecting international legality is essential to deal with crises.
Algeria is convinced that the time has come for the international community to become aware of the importance of preserving international security, seriously assuming the causes of crises that fuel international and regional instability and security.
In the same line of thought, at the end of his speech, Mr. Chengri has stressed that Algeria strives through its participation in this conference to build bridges for constructive and fruitful dialogue to promote peace and security.
We aspire, through the participation in this conference, to create bridges for constructive and fruitful dialogue and to instill a common and multidisciplinary understanding that allow us to work together to promote peace and security, development and progress for all the peoples of the world.
Algeria has condemned, through the voice of the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, the terrorist attack perpetrated last Sunday against the Shah Sharag shrine in Iran's southern city of Shiraz, causing several deaths and injuries. A foreign ministry statement said Algeria expresses its solidarity with the Islamic Republic of Iran in these tragic circumstances. Following remarks made by Alassane Ouattara, president of the Côte d'Ivoire, the Military Council in Niamey announced that the recall of Niger's ambassador to Abidjan. The council considered that Ouattara was endorsing the military operation against Niger. The Military Council in Niger expressed its entire rejection of the statements made by the president of Côte d'Ivoire that go beyond consensus of ECOWAS, stressing that what is seen as haste is evidence of manipulation coordinated by some external powers.
The
National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland and the government of Niger have followed with astonishment and disbelief the exaggeratedly threatening remarks made by His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of Côte d'Ivoire, relaying and taking on board with notorious aggressiveness the conclusions of the extraordinary summit of ECOWAS. It was therefore with astonishment that Nigerians followed this justification for armed action against Niger, advocated by His Excellency Mr. President Alassane Ouattara, in a relentless desire to destroy the country and its people, far from being the expression of the will of the brotherly people of Côte d'Ivoire, whose friendship with the people of Niger is unequivocal. This unusual declaration by President Ouattara and his eagerness to carry out this in every way illegal and senseless aggression against Niger in reality reflects an injunction addressed to him and certain of his peers in the ECOWAS by other external powers. This is why the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland and the Government of Niger expressed their total rejection of the remarks made by His Excellency President Alassane Ouattara, which go beyond the common position of the sub-regional organization, itself devoid of any legal basis, and decide to recall the ambassador of Niger in Abidjan for consultation.
West African Army chiefs will meet in Ghana's capital Accra on Thursday and Friday to prepare for a possible military intervention to restore democratic order in Niger. A spokesperson for regional bloc ECOWAS said on Tuesday the meeting was scheduled to take place on Saturday, but it was postponed for reasons described as technical. The new date from the meeting comes a week after group's leaders decided to deploy a reserve force belonging to it to restore constitutional order in Niger in the wake of the July 26 coup against President Mohamed Bazoum. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Tuesday he still saw a chance for diplomacy to reverse a coup in Niger, as the West African bloc ECOWAS keeps up pressure on the military rulers in Niamey. The head of the U.S. diplomacy said Washington remains focused on diplomacy in achieving the results that it wants. He added that pressure that's been exerted by many countries, including through ECOWAS, on the military leaders in Niger is mounting.
We remain very focused on diplomacy for achieving the results that we want, which is the return to the constitutional order. And I believe that there continues to be space for diplomacy in achieving that result.
Likewise, the Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke to Mali's military leader about the recent coup in Niger on Tuesday. He stressed the importance of peaceful resolution of the situation for a more stable Sahel. Mali's interim President Assimi Goïta said on Twitter. The Kremlin also said in a statement that the call was initiated by Mali. The party specifically focused on the current situation in the Sahara-Sahel region and emphasized in particular the importance of setting the situation in the Republic of Niger solely through peaceful, political and diplomatic means. Tragedy struck in Nigeria as a deadly ambush by gunmen claimed the lives of at least 26 security personnel and left 8 others wounded in the state. Additionally, a Nigerian Air Force helicopter crashed following an attack by armed gangs, and spokesperson for Nigerian Air Force stated that the crash occurred near the village of Shukuba in the Shiruru district, central Nigeria. The incident is under investigation with passenger details yet to be confirmed. Still in the African continent, the Libyan Ministry of Health declared a state of emergency on Tuesday after armed clashes continued in some areas in Tripoli between the defense forces and the 441st Brigade, the two most important and most influential armed forces in the country. More in this report.
Two powerful armed factions battled in Libya's capital on Tuesday in the city's worst violence this year. The fighting, which rocked districts across the capital, erupted late Monday between Special Deterrence Force and the 444 Brigade, two of the strongest military forces in Tripoli, following the detention of a 444 Brigade commander. The death toll from the clashes remains unknown, yet a spokesperson for the ambulance service said 19 people had been injured and 26 families evacuated from a strife-hit district, as the health ministry appealed to citizens to donate blood to help the injured.
The Ministry of Health, hospitals, as ministerial affiliated bodies, we declare a state of emergency. We are now declaring a state of emergency in the country. We hope that the war will stop, the conflict will end, and that we return to dialogue and discuss the problem better than having a war.
Dark plumes of smoke were seen over parts of Tripoli on Tuesday, and the sound of heavy weapons rattled through the streets after overnight clashes. Residents and local media reported fighting in different parts of the capital, which was eased later in the evening. The clashes between the 444 Brigade and the Special Deterrence Force, which both backed the interim government of national unity during brief battles last year, shattered months of relative calm in Tripoli.
Abdullah Batiri, the UN envoy to Libya, has expressed deep concern over the evolving situation in Tripoli. He stressed the imperative of safeguarding civilians amidst the ongoing developments. Through an announcement on the X platform, Batiri urgently appealed to all parties to hold escalation of violence and honor the public's call for peace and stability. He highlighted the significance of swiftly reaching an agreement to pave the way for elections and unification of state institutions.
The mission reminds all parties involved of their responsibility under international law to protect civilians. The mission is also concerned about the possible impacts of these developments on the ongoing efforts to cultivate an environment that is conducive to advancing the political process, including preparations for national elections. The mission calls for an immediate de-escalation and an end to the ongoing armed clashes. Violence is not acceptable means to resolve disagreements. All parties must preserve the security gains achieved in recent years and address differences through dialogue.
The Moroccan Interior Minister has revealed that 195 licenses for cannabis related to activities have been granted in a Rif region since the controversial legalization in 2021. This move has triggered condemnation both internally and internally, with the voices expressing concerns about the potential threats to regional security.
Despite widespread criticism, Morocco is persistently moving forward with its decision to legalize cannabis-related activities, raising alarm bells over potential security and regional stability risks. The approval of cannabis-related activities in 2021 has led to the issuance of 195 licenses in the rural northern Rif region of Morocco. This area, characterized by socio-economic challenges, has been targeted to encourage cannabis cultivation, leading many to suspect the government's intentions in legalizing the drug trade. Over 150 Moroccan human rights associations specializing in drug control have repeatedly warned against the consequences of legalizing cannabis cultivation and usage. Such a move could escalate the risks of flooding neighboring and European countries with illicit substances. Critics argue that the Moroccan government stance effectively supports and emboldens transitional organized crime networks, posing a serious threat to peace, security, and stability in the entire Maghreb region. There are concerns that this could be linked to supporting the illegal occupation of Western Sahara.
It was concretely confirmed today that this dangerous trend, not only through supporting organized and encouraging transnational crime networks and terrorist organizations via the increasing outpouring of Moroccan drugs as the largest producer and exporter of cannabis in the world.
On an international scale, reports emphasize the environmental impact of cannabis cultivation, which relies heavily on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. This cultivation method poses threats to the countryside, including deforestation and excessive water consumption. As Morocco continues down this controversial path, both domestic and global concerns about the implications of legalizing cannabis-related activities persist.
In a joint statement, United Nations humanitarian organizations have called for an end to the tragedy in Sudan and affirm that the situation is getting out of control day after day in this 4-month war. Meanwhile, the Vice President of Sudanese Sovereignty Council, Malik Agar, announced the presentation of a roadmap that begins with reaching a ceasefire between the army and the rapid support forces and includes a dialogue between the political forces and which aims to establish a transitional phase and elections. In a televised speech broadcast on Sudanese television, Agar said that the priorities of the coming period began with implementing the roadmap to end war, deliver aid to all parts of Sudan, communicate with all parties and prevent the spread of war to the rest of the country, adding that the roadmap will aim to put an end to any military formation outside the armed forces.
I expounded and discussed the details of the roadmap that the Sudanese government will implement over the next period to end the war. The roadmap will start with reaching ceasefire between the Sudanese army and the rebel paramilitary support forces. This will be followed by the beginning of a humanitarian operation to funnel humanitarian aid to citizens affected by the war. We will also focus on guaranteeing as much as possible an ordinary life to Sudanese citizens. These steps will be followed by an inclusive political movement that will include all the political and civilian forces that are concerned with the establishment of a Sudanese state.
The mournful echoes of mourning reverberated through Jericho and the Jordan Valley, and the bodies of the two young martyrs, Qusay Ammar al-Walij and Muhammad Rabhi Nujum, were laid to rest during the funeral procession. The participants passionately condemned the occupation's crime against the Palestinian public. The rallying cry called for reinforcement of national unity and steadfastness in the face of the occupation. Iran's Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian emphasized the vital importance of unfreezing Iranian assets held in different countries to facilitate diplomatic efforts. Echoing this sentiment, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani underscored that the recent agreements encompassing the exchange of prisoners between Iran and the United States, along with the release of frozen assets abroad, signify promising prospects for positive talks with Washington.
The Iranian government has always affirmed that it has never strayed from negotiations and diplomatic channels. Since the election of President Ibrahim Raisi, Iran decided to act in two ways: removing the impact of sanctions and seeking to lift the unilateral and abusive sanctions through diplomatic means.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday that Biden administration's overall approach to Iran had not changed after an agreement on Americans detained there, and that Washington would pursue a strategy of deterrence, pressure, and diplomacy. Blinken spoke on Monday with the families of some of the detainees released to house arrest last week, he told reporters in a news conference.
Nothing about our overall approach to Iran has changed. We continue to pursue a strategy of deterrence, of pressure, and diplomacy. We remain committed to ensuring that Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon. We continue to hold the regime accountable for its human rights abuses, destabilizing actions in the region, funding of terrorism, provision of drones to Russia for its use in war against Ukraine, among many other offenses.
Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the West of adding fuel to the fire for the war in Ukraine. Mr. Putin laid the blames on the West while addressing a security conference. He further accused the West of provoking conflicts in other areas, claiming NATO is transferring military confrontation to outer space and the information space.
NATO member countries continue to build up and modernize their offensive capabilities, make attempts to transfer military confrontation to outer space and to the information space. They use military and non-military means of pressure, and all this is happening amid the destruction of the arms control system. The United States seeks, among other things, to adjust the system of interstate interaction that has developed in the Asia-Pacific region.
The Russian defense minister said Tuesday that Ukraine's ability to fight had been almost exhausted. Mr. Shoigu added that the war has exposed vulnerabilities in Western weapon systems that Moscow would soon share with all the world.
In these secret workshops, Ukrainian mechanics repair destroyed military equipment that keep coming into the country and also keep arriving to such workrooms. The war is fierce there. The military vehicles are always at the target. These mechanics say they have to learn how to carry out repairs for the war-damaged military equipment.
We're shocked every time we see armored vehicles arriving here without wheels, without oil, without engines, that are not functioning, with shell, mine and missile damage.
This comes as the Russian Defense Ministry says Ukraine's military has almost exhausted its ability to fight. The war has shown devastation across swaths of eastern and southern Ukraine, despite the continued Western military aid to Kiev. A military aid that the Russian defense minister says he would share details about its weaknesses and that none were invulnerable.
In the special military operation, the Russian army has debunked many myths about the superiority of Western military standards. As it became obvious, the deployment of Western weapons and NATO's allegedly advanced methods of operations planning, techniques of personnel control and training failed to ensure superiority on the battlefield.
In the midst of heavy fighting in the east of his country, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited his brigades fighting Russian forces on the front line. The visit was aimed at boosting troops' morale.
More international news all around the world in this report.
Economist Santiago Pena was sworn in Tuesday as Paraguay's president, promising to build alliances and show firm and ethical leadership for the next 5 years after his April election victory. Pena took the presidential oath outside Asunción's government palace in a solemn ceremony attended by South American leaders, the King of Spain and Taiwan's Vice President William Lai. Pena, 44, secured a solid election victory in April and replaces Mario Abdo Benitez. Both are from the conservative Colorado Party, which has dominated Paraguayan politics for the last 3/4 of a century.
Friends and family of over a dozen missing people were seen anxiously waiting on Tuesday for their loved ones as rescuers continued to scrape through the debris of one of the deadliest landslides in the Indian hell town of Shimla in the Indian Himalayas. Thousands of rescue personnel have been deployed to remove the remains of a temple which collapsed due to a torrential rain-triggered landslide in Shimla on Monday. At least 57 people were killed in the region when torrential rains caused landslides to collapse, buried homes and dragged buildings down.
A group of residents have set up a one-stop relief area for residents to get what they need to recover from the devastating wildfires that destroyed the region of Lahaina in Hawaii. This includes water, food, hygiene and medical products, as well as mental health assistance. As cleanup efforts continue, search efforts are ongoing. On Monday, search teams discovered the remains of a 99th fire victim. The death toll is expected to rise. The deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than 100 years destroyed or damaged more than 2,200 buildings, 86% of them residential, causing an estimated $5.5 billion in damage.
Poland held its biggest military parade since the Cold War took place in Warsaw on Tuesday as the NATO member country flexes its muscle in what the government hopes will be both a message to Moscow and to voters ahead of elections in October. The Russian-Ukrainian war has boosted the armed forces for Poland's ruling nationalist law and justice, and with the election campaign in full swing, the huge display of military hardware provided a chance to burnish their security credentials.
Ending up with sport, it's not a rumor anymore. Neymar, the Brazilian star, has joined the Saudi Pro League team Al Hilal from French champions Paris Saint-Germain. The fee for the former Barcelona player is estimated to be between 80 and 90 million euros. Neymar, who joined PSG in 2017 for a world record fee of 220 million euros, was left out of their squad for Saturday's Ligue 1 game with Lorient. Now, his departure also fits with PSG's aim of moving away from the Galacticos period of recruiting high-profile players for large prices.
In Saudi Arabia, I am Hilali.
And with this, we reach the end of our news bulletin. Thank you ever so much for taking part with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself and good night.